All right, welcome to part 2 of episode 4 of Go the Mission. We're still here in the same place, broadcasting from St. Joseph, Michigan and Clovis, New Mexico, as we were before. This is, again, your host, Corey Johnson. Missions is my passion, and I'm thankful for another opportunity to continue sharing with you. And again, if this is your first time listening, and even if it's not, go ahead and like, subscribe, and share this with somebody. Just search for Go the Mission on just about any podcast provider or platform like Spotify, Apple, Google, and many more. You can also find the show on YouTube. Just search Go the Mission. We're continuing our discussion with Josh Ramirez, and if you missed part 1, you need to go and check that out because it sets the stage for everything that we're kind of talking about here, and definitely gives you a great picture of who he is and why he's into missions and what he's doing for his mission right now. But with that being said, and go ahead, tell the people what's up, Josh.
Yo, what's good, y'all? What's
so
good?
We're continuing here, and I, from the jump, I'm gonna let you know that Josh is currently pastoring a 4-church district in Clovis, New Mexico. That's where he's based, and there's 3 other townships that his church are based in. And as far as being a pastor, this is always something that's interesting to me, because I got to be honest with you, man. I got some things I got to get off my chest.
You got some beef,
bro. The whole idea of being a pastor is something that I have struggled with. Okay. Just the idea, okay? Because literally, from the time I can remember remembering things, anytime that I would open my mouth in church or at a wedding or in school, or it doesn't matter, like anywhere that I would say anything, people would always come up to me afterwards and be like, "Hey man, you should consider being a pastor." And I hated
Corey Jones.
Oh no, man, I don't even like the sound of that. Like I because I heard it so much, it became the one thing I determined to never be. You know what I'm saying?
Dude.
Like it's like that.
You got some beef, bro.
I got too much history, bro. Too much history.
I know, man. I know, dude.
We're gonna go a lot deeper in this. Life and Times series is coming on the podcast. Life and Times of Corey Johnson, and you'll get to hear all the background of this stuff later. That's coming later. But I wanted to bring that up because we're talking with one of my really good friends who is a pastor right now. So I want to know, like, kind of what it's like for you being a pastor right now. Give us kind of a breakdown of what you do, what your ministry looks like. We'll start there.
Okay, so I am currently, as you said, I'm pastoring a multi-church district, 4 churches that are on the smaller side. So whoever's listening, just to kind of paint a picture of what an average church service looked like before whatever's going on right now. There's probably around 20 people, mostly older individuals, some families and stuff. But that's usually a Sabbath, a Saturday morning for me. And I'm kind of taking turns throughout the district and stuff. So it's an interesting place to be in ministry, especially starting off, this is my first year. I'm about to hit the year mark in June. But it's there's pros and cons to it, man.
Okay.
But being a pastor out here, well, I've only been a pastor here, so in this district. But it's interesting, man. Just the dynamic of it. It's a lot of people don't get it. A lot of people don't get it. So hopefully, just with our conversation, hopefully people get to see a little bit more of what it's like. But I know you asked, what's it like being a pastor? Is there any like a specific question of like, what's my day to day? Like, I'm trying to see like, what do you think?
Sure. Like, tell me. All right. Let me back up by saying this.
Okay.
The reason that I was so against being a pastor wasn't just because people told me it was what I was going to be. I do have a problem like that. People tell me I'm going to be something, and I say, no, I'm not, because they said so. Not because I have anything against it, just because you told me.
Yeah.
But at the same time, when I looked at what pastors did, one, it didn't seem appealing to me, just to be honest. And granted, that's with a lack of understanding of everything that they do, which is why I want to ask you these questions and kind of get a better picture of that. But yeah, we'll start there, and I can elaborate on that a little bit later.
For sure, man. So when you're asking like what's it like to be a pastor, you're kind of wanting me to describe what's like the work life, right? Or what are some of the activities that I get to do, right? Just so I'm a little bit more, know where to go with this. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so as I said, got the 4 churches, smaller churches. I'm the conference, I work for Texaco Conference, which is New Mexico and West Texas, that territory. So they've hired me in a sense to overlook the day-to-day operations of these 4 small churches. Okay. So with that, I have elders under me, some, the different church leadership under me. So it's, I don't know. I think I'm going to describe a little bit of kind of like getting into it, like my first couple months here. Getting into it, it's challenging because, especially when you're young, if you're a pastor that's young and not married, with no plans of getting married anytime soon, it's kind of hard to, I don't know, gain some of the respect of people. So coming into pastoral ministry as like, I'm the pastor, it's weird, man. It's weird. And it's almost like,
hold on though.
Go for it.
Like, I'm sorry, I have to ask. Like, what do people have against pastors who are not married?
Wow, man, this podcast is about to reveal things, man.
I'm just curious.
Okay.
We keep it real. You know how we do.
So, I remember in undergrad, one of our professors, shout out to Dr. Kilgore, he would tell us that when he was an undergrad, they would tell him, no peach, no preach. So pretty much what that means is if you're not married, you don't get a job.
What?
And yeah, and so this is that's what's kind of like in the 50s, I guess. No, like in the 60s, probably.
Okay.
Man, I'm making Dr. Kilgore way older than he really is. So that's kind of the culture of probably that I'm guessing in Seventh-day Adventism. And it's kind of interesting because a lot of people ask me like how'd you get a job if you're not married? I'm like, I mean, they hired me, So it's like, I guess it's kind of like, it shows some maturity or something. It shows, I don't know, man. I don't know how to respond to your question in the sense of like, why? I don't know, man. I don't know why. Like, it used to be that like you have to be married, maybe so you won't get in trouble with ladies. But let's be real. There's been a lot of pastors that they've been married and been getting in way more trouble than some single pastors. So
rough time.
Yeah, man. So I don't know, dude. I don't know. And now I'm just thinking about everything we've talked about right now, and I feel like people are more confused.
It's all right, man. We just try to figure it out. We will get to a point eventually, so that's all right.
And I'm still trying to figure out the pastor thing, man. Like, so, yeah, man. I don't know if that answers your question about the married thing.
Well, to be honest, like, I don't know. So, we're in the same boat on that, so it's okay.
I can say this, though. There's a lot of pressure on pastors to get married.
I guess I'm trying to figure out where is that coming from. Because at Southern, oh my goodness, like, it was a thing. They called Southern Adventist University used to be called Southern, I almost said it, Southern Missionary College. Mm-hmm. But the SMC abbreviation, people always interpret it as Southern Matrimonial College. So you go there with the understanding that, oh, if I'm a pastor, I'm gonna get married, and it's a stigma. It's a thing that's actually there. And even here at Andrews, it's worse. Like, just to be honest, we're legit in the orientation. My first day on campus here, and they're playing this video talking about the seminary and different stuff, and they put a plug in about, they literally kind of interviewed this guy talking about his experience going through the seminary, and then they pan out the camera and they're like, oh, so who's this? Oh, I met this girl while I was in the seminary. And I was like, dude, are you serious? Like, are you really advertising this here right now?
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it.
Okay, so I think with all that, I think there is an image that pastors are expected to fit, like this mold that all pastors have to look a certain way, have to dress a certain way, have to talk a certain way, have to live out their life.
To some nitty gritty.
Okay, so I guess that's where the challenge, like, look, kind of plugging it back into like the district, man, like transitioning in, like, especially with, most of my church members are older. They kind of have this idea, like a pastor should be this, and because they've had pastors with way more experience than me, for sure, by a long shot, they kind of had an expectation. So I think pastors have way more pressure than the average person and the average individual. To find a wife, to find a husband. So it's really tough on pastors, man. It's on theology majors. So I think people gotta broaden their perspectives a little bit, and you don't have to be married, to be a pastor.
I can agree with that. Like, this whole idea of the perception, I think that's probably the thing I had the biggest issue with. I felt like the image that was portrayed, I really didn't know what a pastor was or what they did, but I definitely didn't feel like whatever that status was, I didn't feel like I was someone who could ever achieve that kind of status. And that's another reason why I said that's not something I'm ever going to do, because of how it seemed like they were so elevated, and they had this expectation that because you're this, you have to be like that. And I kind of wonder at the same time if that expectation is fully biblical or whatever, or if it's just kind of like a traditional type thing, or
it's a traditional thing, man. And I think it kind of has to go back to like church history and stuff, and just the nature of humanity, man. Because we like to have role models, we like to have superheroes, and in a sense, the pastor kind of becomes like the embodiment of and our faith tradition in Seventh-day Adventism. Like, there's any question about theology, the pastor should know. If there's any question about life, the pastor should know, because he embodies the gospel, And I'm like, I think if anybody embodied the gospel, it's Jesus,
right?
Not me, dude. Like,
we are not the vicars of Christ.
Yeah, and that's something that I've kind of had to figure out, because being called pastor the first couple times is just strange. It's weird, man.
It's almost like you get the sense that they're putting you on that level.
Yeah, man. So I tell people, hey, just call me Josh. Some people still call me pastor, and I'm like, all right, cool. I especially like my Hispanic, Spanish speaking, pastor. They hit me with that, and I'm cool with it. Like, I'm okay with it, but it's almost like with pastoral ministry, and maybe this is probably one of the reasons why a lot of people don't want to get into it, or they feel like, nah, man, it's because of this elevated position, when in fact I'm just a normal person. Like, pastors are normal people. And I think where pastors fail is when they start thinking they are actually this elevated person, man. Because it's, dude, you could really get you could really get your ego up, man, because you're on stage all the time. People seek your attention. It's really easy to get in that mindset of like, I'm this big shot. I'm this, best thing since sliced bread.
Do you see that happening among like your colleagues, or is it more on the rare side?
Most of my colleagues, at least right now, like are younger, or like the colleagues I interact with more are younger pastors.
Okay.
But I do see it, man. I do see it, and it's like, you know, trying to. Are you referring to like that idea of like I'm a big shot? Is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
Okay, like, I'll be honest, man. When I see it with other pastors, I'm like, bro, chill, bro. Like, I know what your life is really like. You know what I'm saying?
Oh,
like, no. You know, like we all normal people here. You know, why are you trying, man? Why are you trying so, you know, to build up this image, man? So, not like I don't know. I don't want to sound like a jerk, but like if one of these guys is acting like that, I just avoid him, man. You know, I'm just like, you know, I'm not gonna talk bad about them or anything. You know, I'm not gonna try to. You know, I pray that like their ministry goes well, but I don't know, man. The higher you are, man, is the harder you fall, brother. So
true. So, I mean, I guess it sounds like there's a disconnect. And all these questions I'm still keeping in the back of my mind, this original perception I had of what a pastor was. But, like, it seems like there's a disconnect between what, like, where the mission comes in to being a pastor. Because we kind of talked about that in part one, where you go into this experience of mission and you realize, hey, you know, it's not about me. It's actually about everybody else but me, kind of thing. But when it comes to pastoring, some of the things that you're telling me you're seeing is that people make it more about them than the people they're supposed to be serving.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it has to do with the church culture. It's not a lot of pastors. They go in and they want to go and serve, man. I had this certain idea, you know, after graduating, that I'm gonna go out and conquer the world, man. I'm gonna go out there and baptize everybody in Clovis. Like I'm about to do all these different things, and you know, but when you're actually when you're hit with the church culture, and not just here on the local level, but I think in the bigger picture, especially in Seventh-day Adventism, I think a lot of pastors struggle. And I say this from my own personal life. A lot of pastors struggle with actually reaching some of their goals of the mission. And I say that because we're kind of locked into this system, you know what I'm saying? That the church has to run a certain way. And dealing with people that are older than I am, you know, with a completely different mindset, it's kind of hard to navigate some of those relationships. And how are we gonna run the church together? How are we gonna make this place, you know? Because I have a certain vision, but my church members, you know, have, you know, this other vision. And I think I talked about it in part one, that ministry has to be handed off. You know, I'm not gonna be here forever, you know, and that's the thing, like, you know, in the big picture, this is God's church, you know. God's in charge of it. I'm here, and this is what I think of what my job here in Clovis, here in New Mexico, here in West Texas. I think my job is to be there for people, to love on people, to share with them their hurts, to share with them their successes, and just be there as a support. I think that's what it comes down to, man. It is not so much about the preaching. It's not so much about the cool, you know, little things about ministry. But that's what it is in reality. Because sometimes, I'm gonna be honest, sometimes I do forget that it's about the people. Because, you know, sometimes I get into, you know, because I usually have to do 3 prayer meetings in a week.
That's a
lot. I got, you know, 3 prayer meetings. If I'm at church all day on a Sabbath, you know, I'm going throughout the week thinking, okay, like I got to do all these different things, and it's sometimes more about the programs that we put on than the people. And I constantly have to kind of fight back the natural thing to do, which is just think about the programs. Like, as long as we're putting out a good church service, as long as we're putting out a good prayer meeting, like, that's it. But when have you ever had, like, I think about our week of prayer that we did at the end of my year in Palau. It wasn't the sermons that we preached. It wasn't that, man. It wasn't that at all, man. It was, of course, that moved in a certain direction because of the Holy Spirit. But if you think about it, like, God had been building up things through the teachers before us.
That's true.
Through various chapel services before I even got there, before you even got there. Mm-hmm. You know, and of course you've been there longer, so you've seen a lot of these kids grow. But you just, like, everyone kind of had their little part in it, and then we kind of just come in and then we see it, right? Mm-hmm. But that's the thing. It's not about that program. You know, that's not what made it successful. You know, but it's how we interacted, is how various people before us interacted with those students, and most importantly, is how God interacted with those students that made all that possible. So talking about ministry now, I think there has to be a radical shift, man, in the way that we think about church. Is it just programs? Is it just services? Or are we doing life with people? I honestly think I have the coolest job ever. Because I just get to hang out with people. And people might say, oh, pastor's just a bum. He's just being lazy. But nah, man, like, you know what? One example I'm going to, just share here. I went to one of my youth's, like, Christmas plays. Nothing to do with the church. It's like, it's a public high school in the middle of, like, nowhere. It's a super small high school. But I went and I was hanging out with my youth. That probably means so much more to them than me putting on a cool program for them. So, yeah, man, I think I have a coolest job, bro. Just hanging out with kids, man.
I have to admit,
and
like,
old people too. Mostly older people. Never mind. I forget that I'm not in Palau. Oh man. Oh dude.
Oh, that's funny, man. And this is really interesting to me because I think part of my issue was that I felt that a pastor should be like what you described to me. But it's not something I always saw, especially when it came to maybe some of the bigger pastors that I were less personal with.
Sure. Because
I didn't see that. And, I kind of just based my perception of everything that they were just on what I saw, which wasn't good, but, it kind of shaped me to where I am today and where I have been. I find that so interesting because I never thought of, okay, I can go back to the canvassing thing too at Southern. That's something that really turned me off to joining the theology program. Okay. Because this is another part of my story I'll get to in the Life and Time series that's coming whenever it comes. But I had a moment in the middle of my sophomore year where I was actually going to switch to theology. And I was going to start that. But because I saw the people who were there, and it was a theology, I'm just keeping it real here. It was the theology majors that I heard the worst things about. It was the theology majors that were putting on the best show, talking with all the girls and all this stuff outside, but you see them in the dorm and everyone's cursing up a storm and doing this and watching this and all this kind of stuff. And I said the one thing that I never wanted to be was like two different people. And I felt like in that field was the easiest place and the most dangerous place to be two-faced. You know what I'm saying?
Wow, dude. Oh, dude. Woo!
And because I saw that, I said, I don't want to be a part of that. And then, you get to the things you're talking about on the organizational level. Politics, man, I hate politics. Being politically correct is not my thing. Like, I'm going to say what I want to say. And if I think it's right, I'm going to say it, even if it's not in the most, acceptable way to say it. I'm not going to try to go out of my way to be rude. but I'm gonna say it, and if people disagree, then that's on them. And feeling like you're kind of in a box in that sense, where there's only so much you can do because there's so much of the structure that's set up against kind of your expression in that regard. Though all of those different factors are reasons why I decided, you know what, I'm going into business. I would rather do business than go into theology. At least people admit in business that they're gonna be cutthroat and that it's about getting money. So if I want to get money and I don't want to worry about other people, then that's what I'm gonna do, and that's what I did.
Dude, there's so much there, man, of what you're saying, dude. I kind of want to go back to something that you said, and I'll kind of just address everything that you kind of. I want to respond to what you just said, man.
Okay.
I'm gonna be honest, man. I'm guilty of being one of those theology majors. I've been one of those theology majors that didn't give, the ministry the right respect. I'm guilty of it, man. I constantly find myself like kind of having to reevaluate, like, and it's crazy because this first year in ministry, man, has been wild because it's almost like I've had to rediscover myself while I'm doing this, because I discover something in Palau, and then I come here and I'm discovering something else, learning. Dude, it's so easy, man. And I think it's because of the system that, the church is, the way it's set up, that it's almost like you have no choice, of being two-faced. And I want to explain this with as much care and tact, because man, it's almost like I'm gonna be honest. There's been moments where, I'm like showing up to church. I'm about to show up. I'm about to preach in like an hour. I'm waiting for Sabbath school to get through. Mm-hmm. And I'm in the parking lot. I just arrived, and I'm like, I don't want to go in. Like, I don't want to go in, man. Like, I'm not this pastor guy. Like, I can't, Like, I'm like, I look at my life, everything that I'm struggling with, all the different things that occupy my mind and my emotions and all those different things, and I'm like, man, I don't reach like that pastoral standard. And there's moments where I'm like, man, I'm such a sucky pastor, man. But and I'm there like, oh my God, like I don't want to go in. And I'm gonna be honest, I've prayed this prayer before. God, help me fake it while I'm in there. And I think, oh, man, dude, it's so real, man. That two-faced thing, because it's easy, man. And it's easy, but I constantly have to remind myself to show people that I'm human. And I think that's something I want to implement in my ministry, is where there's times where I can show that I'm just a regular person,
and that's okay.
And there's simple ways of doing it. Like, for example, like, I'm in a more traditional church. It's not my my preference, but there's moments where I'm like, I show up to a board meeting and I'm in the t-shirt and shorts, because people need to see me like that. People need to see me enjoying my hobbies. People need to know that, I do, enjoy a cup of coffee, like, that I do even struggle. So I of course, I'm not up there sharing like, oh, this is what I'm struggling with, and I did this on this time, and no. But I'm like, I try to be, as tactful as I can, as careful as I can, because I don't know, man. There are things in my life where I could probably share with you off the record, off the podcast, that I couldn't share on the podcast, or I couldn't share on the pulpit. I couldn't share with church members, because people would be like, man, how, like, this guy's my pastor? Like, this guy's whack. And I've even said that, like, in sermons. I'm like, look, if I told you what I'm struggling with, y'all probably wouldn't want me to be your pastor. But You know what? I'm here. So I showed up. So, this who y'all got.
That's so cool, man.
So I think I I don't know. It's really easy to be like, man, I don't want to do this anymore or whatever. And there's been discouraging moments. But I want to be one of those pastors that makes a difference in the Adventist culture, man. Because I think one of the reasons why theology majors want to let loose and be stupid and make dumb decisions is because there's this constant pressure, man. Think about it like this, man. Like when there's like a kid that wants to like make it like, think about like a household, so many different rules and so many different expectations, so much pressures on this person that this person's this kid one day is just gonna pop and just act out and go crazy. And I think that's one of the ways that I've like, okay, let me slow down. Let me find people where I can be me, where I don't have to be Pastor Josh, where I'm just Josh, so that I don't do something crazy, and then disappoint my church members, where they're like, man, this gospel that he's talking about must be fake. And that's the thing. It's almost like, again, that elevation, of like pastors all the way up here, and then I'm like down here, and I'm like, instead of trying to look to God, like the average church member is like, man, I just wish I was like Pastor so-and-so, or I wish I had the faith that this pastor has. But in reality, we're all in the same thing, man. We're all struggling with the same stuff, man. That's what it is, man. We're not higher than anybody else. And I want to be one of those people. Again, I'm saying this again. I want to be one of those people that can kind of be there to facilitate the shift in the church, because I honestly don't think the church system right now, how it is, I don't think it's sustainable.
Wow.
So
that's deep, bro.
That's a lot, man. That's a lot.
It is a lot.
I said too much, bro.
I wanna add, like, something I kind of realized, and I'm processing this in this moment, which is kind of cool. A lot of my hesitation or resentment towards the idea of being a pastor, maybe it had less to do with me being fearful of living up to this standard, while that's part of it, but maybe it had more to do with pride and kind of saying, well, how many different ways can God suggest an idea to you, and you kind of keep saying, nah, like I'm not about that life. And I say that because the way you're describing being a pastor, I'm making the connection more with the idea of a mission and service, as opposed to profession. You know what I'm saying? And if that is the case, then you level the playing field, as you're saying, where it's not me up here and everyone else down here, and we're all in this together, that kind of concept. If that's true, everyone is dealing with the same kind of struggles. Nobody's perfect. I am not perfect. There have been times when, let's say, being chaplain or leading a canvassing program, where I've had my struggles, and it's not about being perfect in those moments, because it's not about us. We shouldn't be trying to have people in whatever ministry we are trying to look at us, but looking to Jesus. And if I'm claiming to follow Jesus, I can't afford to be two-faced about the fact that, you know what, I am a human. I'm not a God that is free of not having these struggles. I'm a human who has these kind of struggles, but because of this is why we can connect and why we can help each other grow through this experience. That's powerful, man.
Dude, for sure, man. And that's the thing. It's about growing together, growing with one another. And of course, I think God calls various peoples, and I believe I'm called to this, this career and this profession, because it is a career. I have different goals and stuff for myself. But I was just thinking about this, at the end of the day, isn't the calling that a pastor has the same calling that everyone has? Isn't everyone called to go,
Yes.
go?
Yes.
And that's the thing. It's I hope that from, my time as a pastor here and wherever I go next, that I can, just facilitate people to go, You know what I'm saying? If if it's getting involved at the local church, if it's getting involved in whatever, at the end of the day, we're all called to live at a higher standard than the world. We're all called to follow the same Jesus. There's not a pastor Jesus, like just for pastors. No. Like, we all serve the same God. We all serve the same Savior, man. And it's a calling that everyone has, man. I love that. One thing I want to share with you, which is pretty interesting, man. I just watched A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, and about Mr. Rogers, man. Mm-hmm. And
that show was my jam.
Dude, the movie doesn't necessarily show so much about the life of Mr. Rogers, but rather how the way that he lived his life impacted other people.
Wow.
And you know what, I began to just, like, every time a movie gets in my head, I'm like, I need to research on it, whatever. So I actually found out that Mr. Rogers was an ordained Presbyterian minister.
Huh.
He was ordained, brother. So, but his church was that show that impacted so many people, man.
Yeah.
Millions of people around the world, man. So, and he never talked about Jesus on the show. He never did these things, but it was like, through his kindness and all these different things that it made a difference, man. It made a difference. And it was the way that he lived out. But I think everyone's called to live that way, to be a little light in whatever neighborhood we're in. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, I don't know. That was a cool movie. I recommend it to anybody who's listening. Check it out.
I'm going to check it out. I've been meaning to myself. But, I'm really glad you said that, because it does get back to the heart of what this whole thing is about. Like, anyone who is following Jesus, we all have this same responsibility. And it's not something that we can afford to put on other people and then get upset with them when the way that they do it doesn't meet our standard. Because it's not about us, even as the ones being served. We should be willing to take part in that. And yeah, they might be in that position and they help on a different level. But each and every one of us, as long as we're saying we believe in God and we follow Jesus, we should all be willing to take part in mission and service to whoever we can, wherever we can. That's a big deal, because
for sure,
that,
man.
To me, when it comes to you mentioned like the structure and the ministry of the church as a whole, and its sustainability. One thing that could be sustainable is if the community got the impression from Adventists that these are people that care about people, that they might have different viewpoints and different stances on different topics, but at the end of the day, they care about people.
Yeah, man.
Like, oh man, that's something that could last forever.
That's the thing, bro. And looking back, some of the most influential people in my life were pastors. I can't remember any of their sermons. I can't remember any of like those impactful talks. Nah, man. What I remember, it's probably similar to what people remember of those really amazing teachers in Palau. Mm-hmm. They don't remember what they taught them.
It ain't about those.
Maybe something, maybe a little something, but nah, man. It's about the time that you spent with them. It's the time that you loved on them. Mm-hmm. And I know. At the beginning of the podcast, you were kind of like, "Nah, man, I don't. Being a pastor, not for me." But Corey, I'm gonna be honest with you, and I'm gonna put you on blast for a little bit on your podcast. That the time you were in Palau, man, I saw you. I saw this man, listeners. I saw this man be a pastor. So I know he was Coach Chaplain Corey, but I think I would add Pastor Coach Chaplain.
Don't do it, bro. Don't do it.
Corey Johnson. I would have to add that, man. And again, I think anyone can have a heart of the pastor. Anyone can have that heart, and it's a heart for people. Just because I like to go up and talk about Jesus once a week on for like 35 to 45 minutes doesn't make me any different than anybody else. that's one of the ways I like to share. But no one's gonna remember that anyway. Like, no one remembers, man. The sermon's done. No one's like, Pastor, great sermon. I ask him the next day, hey, what did I preach about? God's love. Bro, of course I did. Every sermon's about God's love, man. Yeah, man.
You know, I will admit that I'm sitting here thinking to myself, shoot, man, this dude might actually convince me. But it's actually deeper than that, though, because I'm realizing that kind of getting back to these feelings that I had from the beginning, it had to do with how little I was actually taking part in the mission of what it meant to be a Christian. Like, because I didn't have the interest in going, I didn't see any reason why I should use what people were telling me was a gift I had in that capacity. That's not where I wanted to use it, because my heart wasn't there. And the reason, part of the reason that I came back, leaving Palau to come back here, was ultimately to be a chaplain in the military, even though those plans have changed. But the point was that I was open to the idea of being in the ministry in that kind of capacity, because that whole experience and actually serving is what changed my heart from being one that looked towards just me and not wanting to do this because people said this, and now being open to do something because it's what I felt I should be doing.
Dude, it's almost like God sneak attacked you, bro. Like, he went around and it was like, I'll let him be a pastor in these other things. But I kind of wanted to ask you,
okay,
like, I kind of wanted to ask you something, and it's a question that came to my mind. Can you remember? Man, maybe you want to mention, maybe you want to give some shout outs or something.
Okay.
But can you think of some people in your life that have been pastors to you that weren't pastors?
That weren't pastors.
They weren't pastors as a profession, but they had a pastoral heart, which is the heart of Jesus, man, in reality. Because think about it, the word pastor, it comes from that shepherding, man. And Jesus is the good shepherd, man. That's what I'm saying. So
You're right.
So it goes beyond having the title. So I want to challenge you with this. Was there some people, influential people in your life, where, it was like they had a pastoral heart to you?
You know what? And I think part of my experience that I'll go into a lot more detail later, but within canvassing, like getting into that, just to give a little background, it's not something that I was going into because I wanted to canvass or do the actual mission work of canvassing. Yeah. Like, my whole premise of going in there was just to see if God was real. Like, that was the point in my life where I was like, I'm going to believe in God or I'm not. That's where canvassing comes into the scene in my experience. And not only did God reveal himself to me, but in the moment where I'm going through these struggles of calling myself a Christian but not really even believing in God, there are people within this canvassing ministry who are giving me a chance to grow and develop, and they were able to meet me where I was in my experience and help to bring me to another level of understanding and appreciation, not only for God but for serving in the mission work. Like, if I were to tell you that my first summer, after I finished my first summer, my mentality was I'm never going back, but then to tell you in the next breath that I would come back for 7 more summers, that people would be like, what in the world happened? Yeah. And it has a lot to do with the people that were there. I got to give a shout out to Renita Samuel. Just had her on the podcast a couple weeks ago.
I heard 3. I got to hear that podcast, man.
Yeah. Like, she was one of them. Another one of our leaders in the program there, Vlasta Hibble. He's another one, mentor. They're not pastors, but the way that they embraced me and helped bring me up in the ministry and service and just interacting with people, that's something that had a huge impact on why I think the way that I do today. For sure.
One of those people who has a pastoral heart, and I didn't necessarily experience so much of this individual, but shout out to Mr. Nelson, bro. Dude, that man has a pastoral heart, man. That man has, and to the listeners, I don't know if Corey's talked to you guys about Mr. Nelson, but
I haven't yet.
He's the GOAT, man. He's the GOAT.
He is the GOAT.
Vice principal currently at the Palau SDA schools, man. And shout out to Abner. I was hanging out with him too this last time.
True.
And I was like, bro, you should be a pastor. And I was just listening to him, and I was like, bro, you should be a pastor because, dude, I like just a couple weeks back, man. He was ministering to me, man, and so there's just various people, man, that all through, and that's the thing. I hope what people understand after listening to this is that you are called to be a pastor as well. Everyone is called to pastor somebody, to share, to just be there for somebody. That's pastoral ministry right there, man. That's what it's about.
I like that. It's not about ordination. It's not about organization. It's not about having your MDiv. It's not about any of that. Like, for real, any of you who you say I'm a follower of Christ, being a follower means that you're a pastor, you're a shepherd, because there are some people that only you can reach that other people that speak in a church every week are not going to be able to reach because they don't have the influence that you do. They don't have the personality that you do. Man. They don't have the same friend group that you do. They're not going to be able to reach anywhere near the types of people that you are able to. So I want to encourage you all as you're listening, like, don't make that separation like I did for a long time, thinking that those are people who do this and they live a certain kind of way. No, simply because we follow Jesus,
man.
We all have that opportunity to take part in this mission, to go and to serve.
Dude, one thing I want to add there to what you just said, man, is that because, like, it's almost weird introducing myself to people that are not from church. And the questions like, so what do you do? I'm like, it's almost like, I know once I say this, you're gonna act super weird. And that's why I wanna invite people, like, hey, like, there's people that will never open up to me, that will never be open to have a conversation with me because of the mistakes that church. Yeah, simply because I'm a pastor, simply because of what I represent. And a lot of people have been hurt by the church. That's why we need people in business. That's why we need people in the medical field. That's why we need people work like in restaurant business. That's what we need in every avenue. We need people with the pastoral heart, because preaching is just a little bit of the job. It really is, man. There's so much other stuff. But that's the thing. Like, we need to be about people, about the mission. Go, man. Go. Whoever's listening, go. Do it.
I love it, man. I honestly can't think of a better way to close up part 2.
I say it, brother, right
this
there,
episode
man.
Here. Like, that's what it's about. And I'm gonna leave it on Josh's words right there. He said it better than I could. And so I want to thank you guys. And I want to thank Josh again for spending this time with us, man. I'm definitely going to get you back on here for something else.
Bro,
we'll just talk about something.
Dude, we can talk about anything, bro. It honestly, it doesn't matter, bro. We could make another podcast, bro, like, so for random stuff, man. We
could do it. I'm so down.
Not anytime soon. Not anytime soon. We got to focus on the mission,
You're right.
And honestly, if we did record a podcast like that, man, maybe it should be private, man, because it's all going to be inside jokes, funny things, man, that no one would understand. But
that's true. The world
Corey,
would be lost.
Man.
They'd be lost on that.
Yeah,
Nah, man, of course. Thank you for sharing and helping to change. Like, and I will say this. These kind of conversations are so cool for me because I'm not coming from the standpoint of having all the answers and just wanting to share your story because I think it's cool and it should be done. Like, I'm doing this because I get to learn too. And learning is actually another one of my passions, low key. Maybe that's why I'm having so much fun with school and classes right now. But it's not like that at all. And I appreciate your insight. And I'm excited to see in person as well the good things that continue to happen from your mission down there in Clovis, man. So,
thanks, brother.
Yeah, man, of course. I want to thank everyone who's taken the time to listen to part 2 of episode 4 of Go the Mission. Once again, this is your host, Corey Johnson. I want to remind you guys that every other weekend you can expect a new pod to drop. And on whatever platform you're tuning in on, like, subscribe, and share so we can continue to get the mission out there. And again, if you have any questions about missions, or you're wondering how to be a missionary, or even if you want to understand more of what missions is and, just in the broader sense, let me know. We can talk about that. You can reach me by using my email at gothemission@gmail.com, or drop a comment or message through social media or YouTube. And finally, remember, to exist is not enough. We out here to be out here. Until next time, peace.